Everybody, whether you're the president of a company or the paper boy, everybody has the exact same amount of time. You and I both have 24 hours a day. No more, no less. The question is, what do you do with your time?
Welcome to the Z-Book Successful Authors Podcast. And today, I have another big gun. I can't wait to talk to her. Her name is CS Lakin. She's an award-winning author and blogger at Live, Write, Thrive. Don't you just love that name? That just makes you want to go there and opt into all of her stuff. So she's written 20 novels and 10 writing crafts books and works full-time as a copy editor and writing coach. She teaches writing workshops in person and online at cslakin.teachable.com, and she specializes in manuscript critiques and has helped many authors garner agent and publishing contracts as well as win prestigious awards. So let's do some thriving with CS Lakin. Hi, Susan. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for the wonderful introduction.
I love that name, Live, Write, Thrive. Isn't that what it's all about?
It really is. Yeah, I started my blog in January of 2012, and I've been going full bore on that, and that's when I thought up the name. And I just felt like the whole idea of writing is that it's a career. It's not something that you just do once. It's not like you just have a book in you. You should have an author in you. And the idea is to thrive through your journey. So that's been my focus for the last 7 years now, I guess.
Nice. And you're in California, and your parents had a little bit with screenwriting, or tell us about that.
Oh, well, I grew up in Los Angeles with a screenwriter, producer, mother. She started out, writing scripts, and she went into script supervisor and other things like that. So I grew up reading a lot of scripts and sitting in a lot of sets. Some of my fun memories, like my mom used to be the story editor on Mod Squad, and at the time...
Oh, I watched that.
Total hip show, right? Well,
Yeah.
I just wanted to be super cool. So whenever they went on location, I remember one time, like at the LA Zoo, I would ditch school and go so I could sit on the set. I always like to sit in Peggy Lipton's chair and wear my dark sunglasses. And, keep in mind, I was 10 years old at the time.
Was she the blonde agent?
Yes. It was
I
one
remember
white,
that.
one black, one blonde, remember?
Yeah,
So,
the Mod
Clarence,
Squad.
Yeah, Clarence Williams III, he was so into his sunglasses and he wouldn't take them off indoors or anything. It was just like a black issue for him. It was really kind of cute. But anyway, so so I used to do all that. I would sneak into sets like MASH, and or I'd go into the Lost in Space set and play with the styrofoam rocks that were supposed to be
Really?
rocks.
MASH and Lost in Space.
Yeah, those are different studios. But my mom had offices in various studios over the years, MGM and other places. So
That's cool.
And so, as a kid growing up, I was just, real involved or around the Hollywood milieu. But the big warning us kids were given was, don't you ever go into Hollywood and TV or writing for the film industry. Of course, my older brother ignored that, and he became a super highly successful TV screenwriter and producer, produced Dallas. And
Really?
shows.
Your brother produced Dallas?
Not only that, but if you ever heard of the whole gimmick, Who Shot JR? That was my brother. He made that up. And all that.
Cool.
It's like one of the most famous, cliffhanger things in TV and history, I guess. But anyway, so that was what I grew up with.
And so then you started writing books and thought, okay, I want to help people do that, or the other way around, or how did you evolve?
Well, I think it just started, I've been writing novels for a lot of years and attending workshops and conferences, and then I started into editing, just as a career to make a living, because I was not making a living selling novels, which is hard to do. So as I went into editing year after year, I would be mostly editing novels, and so many of them were structured so poorly that I almost felt guilty taking their money, and I would just say to these writers, I'm line editing your material, and I'm correcting your spelling and your syntax and fixing your but your story sucks. No, I wouldn't say that. I mean, the story structure wasn't working, right?
Yeah, we know what you're talking about. Don't worry.
Yeah, so I decided instead, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 5 years ago, to focus on critiques and to really encourage writers to get critiques instead of starting with editing. So it's a re-education process because nobody really does does what I do. I mean, people do developmental editing, and a lot of people will, hire a developmental editor to help them with their story idea. But when you talk about developmental editing with an editor that does that, they also do a lot of line editing as a part of that. They'll chop out paragraphs and they'll move paragraphs. And to me, all of that is still wrong timing. If you don't have your structure of your story correct, it doesn't matter if you move a paragraph around. If you have a scene that shouldn't be in there, you need to throw that scene out. And if you're missing a scene, you need to write it. And you need to, it's sort of like you've got this puzzle with a bunch of pieces. Maybe it's a 20-piece puzzle, or let's try an 80-piece puzzle if you have 80 scenes or whatever. And you're moving all these puzzle pieces around, but it might be that you've got a whole bunch of puzzle pieces that don't really fit your puzzle. You need to throw them out and get some different puzzle pieces in there. Yep. You want to get that big picture completely, all the puzzle pieces fitting perfectly together before you start dealing with like fixing a sentence or changing a character's name or background or something like that. So I've been working on that for years. I do more than 200 critiques a year, and I have been for years. And I really just emphasize that. People write me, say, hey, I'm a new writer, and I've just finished a book. I want to have it edited. And I say, well, how about you start with a critique? So most of the time they'll say yes, like 95% of the time, because they don't know what they're doing and they appreciate the advice. And I usually start with either a scene outline critique, which I have a template and I have examples. I have a very specific way I like to have a scene outline created, because there are elements about each scene that I want to know, that if they just write a summary of each scene, like Joe goes to the store, Joe buys the hamburger, and then he goes home and gets hit by a car, whatever. That's just not enough information for me to be able to critique it in light of the whole overall story. So I like to start with scene outline critiques, which I charge by the hour. And then I also encourage people to start with a 50-page critique also, because a 50-page critique will look at the writing itself and the scene structure and the plot and character and premise setup, which is all something I can't see in a outline critique. So those two together are really, really great. In fact, I'm like this week I'm working on my second one already this week of my 50-page critique. So this is like my staple, basically. I just do almost like one a day. And I think that's just really, really helpful. A lot of writers used to just pay me thousands of dollars to critique their entire manuscript. And I would get to this point where I felt like I was sort of stealing their money, because I would end up, most of the time, especially a first novel, I would end up saying, this isn't working, this isn't working, this isn't working, as politely as I could, and without reading 5 million times, this isn't working. You really just need to, this is not supporting your premise. You don't have an inciting incident. You don't even have a character goal. Your character doesn't even want anything for the whole story. Let's get back to the premise.
Okay, so let's talk about that structure. You were talking about moving the boxes and stuff. So I've been looking at your stuff too, and you have these 10 key scenes. You also mentioned a template, but can we go over the 10 key scenes first?
Yeah. The template is for a scene outline critique, and that's just something anybody can find on my website, on my blog, Live, Write, Thrive. On my resource page, I have tons and tons of charts and templates, and I'm sort of like a chart master. I like make charts for everything. I love charts. So I have 10 key scene chart, but I also have numerous 20 key scene charts, action reaction chart. I have a romance 20 scene chart. I have a subplot 20 scene chart. So if you get into my book, Layer Your Novel, which starts with the 10 key scenes, those 10 key scenes are pretty foundational for just about any genre. But from there, when you build like your next 10 scenes, you might want to veer off in a specific direction. For instance, if you are writing a romance, there is a very set structure for romance novels. Right. So you'd want to, use that chart for a basic framework to move forward.
Right. So sounds a little bit like Sean Cohen's story grid template, but you have a chart for each genre, and that sounds really cool. So, so what about the scene outlines and the subplots or the differences?
Oh yeah, so I don't have a chart or a layer for each genre. I pulled out the romance one because it's very particular. But if you were writing thriller or you're writing fantasy, you're not going to have a very specific structure that's going to be different from another structure. In other words, if you have your 10 key scenes, you have an inciting incident, you have, of course, your climax and resolution and your midpoint, all those things, they're going to really work across the board for just about any novel, even literary fiction. But then when you start veering off into other things, and then they won't work necessarily for an epic family saga that crosses many generations, and it might not work for something that's more like a biography, like Sue Monk Kidd's The Invention of Wings, which is basically a story of two women over their whole lifetime. So you're not going to have this basic structure work for that. But for most novels, most stories, this is traditional story structure. It's not something that I made up at all.
Okay.
10 key scenes is kind of the thing I made up, and the layering thing is my way of organizing it. I just like to try to make novel writing, which is really difficult and complex, I like to make it as simple as possible. And writers really find this is so helpful. I get emails probably, I don't exaggerate when I say at least every day, from people saying, I'm so glad I discovered this, because these books or these charts or whatever, this method, because it just makes it so much easier. If you know you need a midpoint moment midway through your story where your character has to make a big choice and go all in, then you can go, okay, what can I come up with that will fit that midpoint moment? And it's going to work. You might not know at the time as you're writing if you're really in the middle yet, because you haven't gotten to the end and you don't know your word count. But if you're laying out your scenes, you can pretty much, guesstimate where things are going to go and in the right places, at least. If your midpoint ends up when you're done writing, at the 80% mark or the 20% mark, then obviously you haven't got enough scenes in the right places. Otherwise, the midpoint would be sitting in the midpoint.
Okay, so can we do a count up? So scene 1 is inciting incident?
Well, your scene 1 is your setup.
Or the 10 key scenes. Okay, the setup is first.
Yeah. So inciting incident would be like a first turning point. Some people talk about plot points. I don't go into the plot points. And I also don't do 3-act structure because it's really confusing. And a lot of novels don't fit 3-act structure, and it's really random and arbitrary. In fact, ancient storytellers only had 1 act. They didn't have a 3-act. So I read about that a bit in Layer Your Novel if you want to read up on that.
Okay.
Many times the 5-act structure was more common. So writers get really caught up in the 3-act thing. It's definitely more of a Hollywood thing. And
and you know why else? Because they said that Steve Jobs did his presentations in the 3-act scene.
Oh, okay.
So did you see that? Yeah, I saw that. Anyways,
no, I didn't.
Yeah.
But also, a lot of people think it's just logical. You have a beginning, middle, and end.
Okay, yeah.
It sounds like 3 acts. And I do, some of my stories, I believe I could easily break into 3 acts, but I talk about how many of my books have 4 parts or 5 parts, and you want the story to dictate how many acts. You don't want the acts to dictate.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so what comes after the setup?
Okay, so your first scene is your setup scene, and it may be more than one scene, but the idea is all of these may be more than one scene for the most part, but the idea is that you want at least one key setup scene that establishes your protagonist in her world, what's going on in her life, what her core need is, and preparing for the inciting incident to come. Most of the time, it's showing your character in her ordinary world. It may, it may not. It could start off with a character who's just arrived in a new place, and now this is a new world or a new life for her. But that's not the inciting incident. You do have to have a setup. The purpose of the setup is really to let the reader know who your character is, and to get your reader to quickly empathize with or be interested in your character. I mean, we don't really love Sherlock Holmes, but we're fascinated by him because he's such an amazing, crazy, intriguing character. So, it's not necessarily that readers have to love your protagonist, but they definitely need to be engaged and want to know this person and what they're up to. So that's the purpose of the setup scene.
And then, because I don't want to, reveal too much, but what comes after the setup?
Well, and also while people are talking, if they want to go to Live, Write, Thrive, go to my resource page and download or look at the 10 key scene chart. It's right there. So you can follow. Yeah, they can follow along, and they can download it or look at it on, through Google Docs or something. But
Okay,
anyway,
livewritethrive.com, and it's right there.
on my resource page, yeah. Just scroll down and you'll find all those charts and things you can click on.
Okay.
So, yeah. So anyway, the second key scene is the inciting incident.
Okay.
And the inciting incident, or the opportunity, or initial disturbance. There's lots of different terms that people use.
Yeah.
But it's a very simple concept, and it should be there pretty much in just about any novel. Is the whole idea of telling a story is you're telling a story because something has happened, or something happens to kick off your story. So this is what this is all about. And unfortunately, a lot of writers, even ones that have done a bit of writing, novel writing, often don't have a clear inciting incident. It really is something very specific, and it has to tie in with the premise. So a lot of times a writer will start a novel in the wrong place, and think, oh, when they move to Italy, that's the inciting incident. But the premise is about how a ghost shows up, and it shows them, some mystery in their house that leads to them discovering a dead body and blah, blah, blah. So if they're considering the inciting incident at the 10% mark is just moving to a place, and then for 5 more scenes, they're moving their furniture in, and they're meeting the neighbors, and they're enjoying the local restaurants and blah, 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 and it's boring and nothing's happening. This is what happens a lot. In fact, a project that I just finished a critique on today, this is what it's reminding me of, because the idea is the writing is lovely, and there might be some great character exchanges and fun dialogue, but if you're not at the inciting incident introducing a situation that moves your character, now shifts your character's attention or direction, either in just a mental or actual way, then the structure's not right. So the inciting incident is the key number one turning point, and it's really important. It should come really early. Oftentimes it's in the first scene. A lot of my novels, it is by the end of the first scene is your inciting incident. With a murder mystery, you start with a dead body. A lot of times, that's your inciting incident. If the story is about a detective solving a murder, it makes total sense that the book will start with the murder. Want to have the murder halfway through, and have the first half of the book, the character drinking lattes with her girlfriend. Right? I mean, seriously, this is what you see a lot with beginning writers, is they just don't think about the structure, and they want to pants it and wing it, and they want to just kind of introduce this character and how wonderful she is and how great, her life is, or whatever, or her bad her life is, whatever, but there's nothing happening plot-wise, and it's really important that plot starts kicking in right away, and it has to tie in with the premise. So let me just take a second to talk about the premise.
Okay.
The premise is basically a what-if question.
Okay.
You're proposing a situation. The actual meaning is like there's a situation that needs to be dealt with. There's a premise that there's something happening. And so, like with the Lord of the Rings, for instance, you have the situation you have as a evil ruler, an evil monster-y kind of guy. He's lost his ring and he wants to find it and get this power back. So now you have a situation where you have a character who has found the ring, and what is he going to do about it? What if this character finds this magic ring and he knows this evil lord is searching for it and will destroy the world with it? How is he going to deal with the situation? So this is what writers need to spend a lot of time working on before they go any further, which is to focus on what's their premise, what is the situation, and how is their character going to handle that situation and deal with that situation. If it's not an interesting enough premise, it's not worth spending months of your life or readers spending 10 hours of their day reading your book if the premise isn't interesting.
Yeah, I don't know his name now, but there's an author that's famous for the tempo, just keeps it moving, and a lot of people hate his writing or his style or the word choice, but even despite that, they love they read all of his books because he keeps them moving through the plot so fast. I don't know what the name is for that. Okay. Anyways, so it's got to move the character. The inciting incident has to move the character, and it's got to tie into the premise.
Right.
Okay.
It's got to set up the premise. I mean, think about it. Like the with the novel The Martian, for example. You've got Mark Watney, he's on Mars. The movie starts off different than the book, which makes sense because the movie starts with the big accident and stuff like that. With the book, it starts with him already having been injured. But cinematically, you can understand why you would start with them in their ordinary world, right? They're in Mars, in their ordinary world, which is out in Mars, doing their Mars thing, gathering stuff and samples and whatever. And then this accident occurs. So structurally for screenplay, that's perfect. It works great. For the novel, you start off with Mark Watney just saying, I am so, effed.
Yeah,
I mean, that's how it starts.
That's right.
He's sitting there. And he's talking and doing the video log or whatever. And it's it's a perfect way to start for the novel because the incident has already occurred, but we have him on Mars. And so the premise there is, how is he going to survive till somebody gets to him?
Yeah.
And he has to be passionate about that. If he doesn't care about his goal, then he's just going to sit there and eat up all the food and forget the potatoes, man, and just, when he's done, right?
Yeah, yeah, and then die.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's, speaking of character motivation, they really do need to want to go pursue a goal. If your character isn't passionate about something and isn't chasing after some sort of goal, then you don't have a story either. And so many books that I critique don't have the character really caring about anything. They might, especially fantasy books, there's usually a group of people that they're kind of stuck on the Lord of the Rings thing and they can't get over it. And it doesn't work anymore. So they have a bunch of aliens or trolls or elves or whatever, and they're just wandering around, going from one place to another, maybe trying to just stay out of trouble or escape. But there's no main character that's pursuing a goal, and so the story just feels purposeless.
Yeah. I can relate with you there. I've seen plenty of those books too. And okay. All right. So what comes after the inciting incident?
So the next turning point is this 25% mark, which is where the goal gets fixed. I don't have it as a 10-key scene, but it's something that, because sometimes it does take more than one scene to kind of get that goal fixed. Okay. But the idea is that from the inciting incident, which is around the beginning, near the beginning or 10% mark, up until the midpoint, you've got the character fixing a goal, and then there should be at least one really significant twist and one pinch point. And I just put one each before the midpoint and after the midpoint. The reason for this is, first of all, you can have a lot more. You can certainly have twist after twist after twist, is what I aim for in my books. I love to have one twist after another, just keep the reader just completely discombobulated and off kilter. But for a basic structure, you want to have one really good, strong twist and one pinch point. The pinch points are where you show the force of the opposition. The first pinch point in the early part of the book shows introduces the opposition basically, or the power of the opposition, and that opposition, for instance, in The Martian is not another person, it's the planet. I can't remember exactly which pinch point happens where, but one of the pinch points, of course, is where his hab blows up and all his potatoes and now he's forced into a new direction. So that's like a pinch point for him. You'd have the same thing in a movie like Castaway, where you have a character that's on a deserted island. There are no other people. Obviously, it's man against nature. So or The Perfect Storm, for instance. All of those movies fit this model. They follow this structure. There is a pinch point at the 33% mark, and there's another pinch point at the 62% mark. And the second pinch point shows the full force of your opposition. So if you have a little minor storm in the perfect storm at the pinch point mark that almost makes the boat, flip over, at the second pinch point, the boat does flip over. You know what I mean? So this is the idea. So I talk about this at length in Layer Your Novel, and I give lots of movie examples. And,
interesting.
Yeah, and also in my online course at cslakin.teachable.com, I have a really extensive, I don't remember how many hours, 4 or 5 or 6 hours, just for the first 10 scenes. And I have more than 20 movie clips, and I also have novel excerpts. So if you really want to nail this, that course is great, and we're going to talk about that at the end, right? Because we have a for your viewers or listeners.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And because it really helps to see a lot of examples. So when you see these pinch point examples, like, a half dozen of these, you read, examples from different movies, and you just go, okay, now I get what that pinch point is. It's the same with the twist. I mean, I shouldn't have to describe or explain what a twist is, but basically it's just a misdirection, or it's a development that happens that kind of comes out of left field that your character didn't expect, or maybe expected, but it happens, and now it's going to change everything.
Okay.
I've got this leaf blower guy out there.
Oh, no. Aren't those illegal yet?
Not in California, right? Yeah, no, I'm actually at my community rec center talking to you because my internet at home is really awful. So it's kind of fun. I'm watching the screaming kids go by, and there's the leaf blowers. Oh, my goodness. Anyway, see, there's a twist. I didn't expect that to happen, but now what do I do?
Yeah.
We're going to take over the world. No.
Hey, we don't have those. Well, we do have those in Germany, but you never hear them. So I'm remembering California now really well. Oh boy, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's kind of funny to think that leaf blowers are evocative of California, but whatever works for you. So, so the twist idea is that you just really want a really strong development that happens that really challenges your character in some way, or opens up a new door opportunity. And it should also be leading into the midpoint. So that's the next key scene. Number 5 is the midpoint scene. Am I counting right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So the midpoint, of course, occurs right at the midpoint, and it's a moment where something happens, something develops in the story that causes your character to have to make the decision to go all in. And
let's wait for the leaf blower to go by, or who is that?
Yeah, those are more leaf blowers. Well, they're kind of moving along the parking lot, and they'll work their way over there. Are you picking that up?
Yeah. But now is okay. We're back to normal. So
okay.
We were at the midpoint scene. Sorry about that.
Yeah, well, that's sort of great to have the rising leaf blower noise and action going on, because it emphasizes the intensity and the importance of the midpoint. Yeah. I see story and everything. So the midpoint is all about greater commitment, all in, and usually from the midpoint all the way up to the dark night moment and the climax, it's all about progress, moving 5 steps forward, 10 steps back, more obstacles, more twists. So the next, number 6 and number 7 are your next twist, your next pinch point. And then it gets you to key scene number 8, which is your dark night of the soul moment. Oh,
and wait a second. I got to write that one down. The dark night.
Oh, you don't know this? You haven't heard about this?
Not in this form, not in those words. Dark night of the soul?
Yeah, it's called the dark night of the soul. It's a dark night moment. Basically, you see this in every strong story. There's always the really difficult moments that come before the final push and the climax. The dark night, you can just think of just about any story, any movie that you've seen where things look absolutely hopeless. How is this going to work?
Sorry. I'm familiar with the hero's journey, and this is always where they go down into the pit.
Yeah, this is exactly the hero's journey. So your character, you're not necessarily, it's not always necessarily like the call to adventure and they turn it down and all that stuff, but definitely the dark moment. This is the pit moment for sure. And depending on the genre that you're writing, that moment's going to vary. If you're writing really lighthearted comedy, you're not going to have a heavy, grueling, anxiety-ridden, suicidal, character that's feel like they've lost everything. But so you have to look at your genre, and with everything, you need to study your genre. You need to study bestsellers in your genre to compare, to see how the structure is working and how these different key scenes are played out. In Layer Your Novel, I don't know how many novels I actually summarize. I do complete scene summaries that go on 2 pages with just a paragraph per scene, and then I put them in bold and I mark them all these 10 key scenes so that you can see, I use Catching Fire from the Hunger Games, and I can't remember what other books I have in there, but when you take a look at it, you can see, I see very clearly, this is the first pinch point. I see clearly, this is the midpoint This is the dark night moment, the pit moment, where the character just can't go on any further. Is just going to lose it. I mean, when we think about the Hunger Games, the first movie, what would you say would be that dark moment, that hopeless, absolutely hopeless moment, since the whole movie or the book itself is like completely hopeless all the way through, right?
Yeah. No, I always confuse it with Game of Thrones.
Oh, okay. So in the Hunger Games, right before the games end and Peeta and Katniss are the last two left, all of a sudden the announcement comes, no, you two can't win together, only one of you can win, and they're hoping that one will kill the other. And they have the poison berries, and they decide, okay, we're just going to eat the poison berries, and they're about to do that, and they basically call the bluff of the game makers. So but that's that moment where like they've gone all the way to the end and they're just about to win, and now there's this hopeless moment, like, you've got to be kidding me. So that's just one example that popped into my head, because I just did a marathon watching all the Hunger Games movies. Like, I think it took us 8 hours to watch all 4 movies on TV over New Year's. It was fun.
Cool.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So I hope that makes sense. But yeah, so the Dark Knight moment. Yeah. So there's lots of things that happen at that Dark Knight moment. Usually the character wants to go back to the kind of person they were before that was safe. Sometimes this is where it looks like all support systems have failed. Everybody and everything that they've counted on to get them through or have not come through. But when you look, oftentimes you'll have something like we had in Star Wars, where Luke Skywalker, thinks it's hopeless, and then at the last second, guess who shows up? Han Solo. He's going to help him, and then they rally and get into the climax. So this is right at the cusp of the climax. And it just segues right into it. There's no real break between the dark moment and the climax. And of course, the climax is your key scene number 9, and it can go on for many, many scenes. Yeah.
The climax can go on for many scenes.
Well, yeah, because it's your big action section of your book, right? I mean, a lot of times you'll have a climax scene, and then you'll have sort of a follow-up. The climax is still kind of going where now everybody else shows up, and they're cheering your hero on. And then, your detective person thinks they've solved the murder, and they are leaving the room, and all of a sudden they see somebody across the street, and they go, oh my gosh, I didn't catch the killer. That's the real killer. You have a false climax, and then you have to deal with the real climax. It's very, very common to have what's called a faux climax or a false climax. That's followed by the real climax, which is always great, because that's a twist. And then, of course, your last of the 10 scenes is your resolution scene. How does it all wrap up at the end, and how to deal with not just tying up the loose ends, but showing your character has arrived and what that's going to look like going forward for that character. And again, there's going to be a lot more scenes. Of course, this doesn't make up your entire novel. 10 scenes does not a novel make, not even a novella. Yeah. So, so from there, then once you have all those in place, you can build on those. And it's just such a great standard, traditional, strong framework for a story, basic story structure. So you can't go wrong with that. Even if you're not even sure if your story will fit into that kind of structure, at least try it, because you might then from there veer off into some other weird constructs, but it will at least help you get your basics in the right place.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting research out there. The hero's journey too. They say it's like in our DNA. It's the story that we all identify with, and so why reinvent the wheel? Right. So, and that's why scene outlines and having them critiqued is so helpful, right? That's what you do, right?
Right. So the idea with the scene outline critique is to just look at what your ideas are for every one of your scenes for your entire novel, and see if you've got all these scenes in the right places, or you have scenes that don't really do anything. The focus is to really, when you're writing scenes, your focus is to always keep not just story structure in mind, but your premise in mind, but to make sure that each scene is serving a very specific purpose. So that's another chart you can download from my resource page, is 8 steps to a perfect scene. Because I think a lot of times people think, I'm going to just write this cool scene. I'm going to have him climb a tree, and when he's up in the tree, he's going to see everything around and decide that he wants to one day own all that property that he sees. Okay, whatever. So, you want to step back and go, okay, well, why would I want to write that scene? What purpose is that serving? Is that helping with my premise? If the premise of the story is a guy decides to build a huge golf resort in this middle of this beautiful area, and all the local people decide to rise up against him, you have the Milagro Beanfield War, which is one of the greatest movies ever, right?
Yeah.
The guy doesn't climb a tree and see the view, and of course it's not, the story isn't told by the developer's point of view. But, you get what I'm saying here. In the Milagro Beanfield War, what's the inciting incident? Do you remember that movie?
Oh, no. Yeah.
Oh, you don't? Okay. So, I wasn't sure. It's a brilliant movie, and Ruben Blades stars in it. And it's about a small little impoverished town in the Southwest, and just like out in the middle of nowhere. And some big developers come in and want to develop a big resort, and they start diverting the water. And so they make it illegal for anybody in the town to use the water. And so this one little farmer who has a tiny little crop of beans, a bean field, which is like not even like a third of an acre, it's like a drought, right? There's no rain, and he's seeing the little trough of water, the little flume of all the water just going by his property, and he's like, forget this, man. And he goes up there with a shovel and he diverts the water and he waters his bean field, which is like no big deal, right?
Right.
But it is a big deal. It turns into a huge deal. The whole town gets involved, and it's the David and Goliath story of the character, the little guy taking down the big, right? And that's a very typical story structure also. But the inciting incident is that he sticks his shovel in the dirt and he diverts a little bit of water into his bean field. It doesn't seem like it's a big thing, right? It's like a silly little plot element, but it is huge for the story structure. So, when you're thinking of your 10 key scenes, they don't have to all be big, dynamic action. They could be very subtle. They could be very small actions. It could even be a character just saying one thing to somebody else, and it could set off a whole chain of events that could change the world.
Yeah, that's cool. And I was looking at your website, and I see all of these things are there, and you don't even have to have an email opt-in for them.
No, this is free stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. As well, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. I was just going to say, I would encourage anyone that's writing novels and really wants to get a lot of meaty information aside from the 2 million words on my blog, to sign up for my mailing list. They'll get a free book. And then if they join my fast track email list, they'll also get 2 free books the first week, and they'll get all kinds of offers and all kinds of stuff. So I'm just all about trying to get people to find an easy way through the quagmire of trying to write a novel. I've written 20 novels in lots of different genres. And one thing I've learned, especially because I've written different genres, is that the key thing that you have to do is take the time to do your homework. And I don't mean just learning writing craft. I mean, go out and buy those like dozen best-selling novels in your genre that are similar to yours, that have like a similar, either a storyline or a setting or a writing style or something that, like right now I'm writing my thriller Lightning Man, and it's a paranormal supernatural thriller, and I've never written that before, and I have spent a year in research, and I have lots of books, not just on my topics, but on that I'm studying for structure, that are very different stories, but they're all a little bit paranormal. They have a character, they're all about a character that has sort of a paranormal ability. And so I wanted to study how these authors were presenting these characters and the action and the balance of the narrative and all that. And this is the best way to learn. And you got to sit down and you got to do your homework. I write out charts. I go through these books and I write all the summaries of all the chapters. I write whose point of view is it? What happens in the scene? Is it a high energy scene? Is it a low energy scene? And this is how you're going to really master story structure for your genre.
Okay, so this is the perfect segue to my number one question, which is, probably already answered it, but how do you make a good story great?
Well, that's a good question, because we all have lots and lots of ideas. Every day, I come up with tons of ideas. Ooh, this would be a cool idea for a novel, or this would be a cool idea for a novel.
Yeah.
You need to be able to take that novel from idea to killer concept. And that doesn't mean it has to be original at all. Everything is pretty much like the same old story that's been done a million times, right? But there's ways to twist it. I call it a concept with a kicker, and I talk about that in depth in my 12 key pillars of novel construction book.
Okay.
Show you all these different ways that you can twist or add a kicker to a concept. A lot of times, all you have to do is just change the occupation of your characters, or change the location or the situation. There's just so many examples that I have in the book, but I was just thinking, there's that one about the two magicians that are sort of vying for the competition of this one woman, or one's angry, the other married the woman that he wanted. And it's just set between two magicians in the 1800s, it's like a weird setting, but I forget which. It's, remember what it is? It's called the, I don't know if it was the Prestige or if it was there's another one. A couple magician movies came out at the same time, and they're both great. Anyway, so the idea is that to come up with a really great concept that when you tell somebody what it is, this is what a high concept is, they say to you, I'm going to kill you so I can steal your idea. That's kind of what you want. You want people to, like when we would tell people what our story is for the menopause murders, my co-writer and I, everybody would say, oh my gosh, that is such a great idea. I can't wait to read that. And that's kind of what you want with your concept. If you tell your concept to people and say, oh, I'm going to write a story about a woman who goes to Italy on vacation and she collects Venetian glass, and then she goes home and shows all her friends her Venetian glass, because I really just want to capture Venice. I want to just write this beautiful story about what it's like to go to Venice. Okay, great. Well, why don't you write an article for a travel and leisure magazine or something, but not a novel? No, but I'm saying it could be a beautiful article. It could be a beautiful article.
It
may not be the right thing for you to do is to write it as a novel, because you're not talking about novel structure, which is all about a character with a goal that's going after this goal amid great opposition and high stakes. So that's what you want. You want high stakes and conflict as high as you can get them, and you want a protagonist who's passionate about a goal, and you want to bring in some theme or themes that are really going to resonate with your readers. And theme is really just the inner motivation of your character made universal. I can say that. Let me say that again. Theme, your character's inner motivation, why they're doing something, made universal. Okay. So when in Fly Away Home, you have a girl who decides to hatch these geese eggs because the nest got destroyed, and she's going to raise these baby geese, and her goal is going to be to take these geese when they grow up and fly them down to some refuge lake in the southeast and save them and give them a home, so that the fish and game guy doesn't take them and kill them or something. She's passionate about this goal for many reasons. But what makes the story so fascinating is that she's got to overcome all these different obstacles in order to reach her goal. Not just learn how to fly these weird kind of contraptions, but she's got to get them to follow her. She's got to bond with them and then get them to fly with her in the air. It's one of the best movies ever. So I don't know how I got off on that topic. But
no, it's a tough question. How do you make a good story great? I think I'm going to pose that to everybody that I interview from now on. And
I would say the main thing is you want to have an amazing character. You don't want to have everybody wants to write this everyday Joe or Jane. I want to just write show an ordinary person and what happens to them. And it's great. We want people to relate to our characters, but honestly, ordinary people are boring. We really want, when we read a novel, we want interesting characters. We want larger than life characters. It doesn't mean they have to be hilarious and outrageous and crazy like Sherlock Holmes. You don't want to have 17 Sherlock Holmeses in your book and then you don't, you just blow your mind. But you want a character that readers can really love. And I spend a lot of time working on my characters. And in fact, I've already written my first 20,000 words in this thriller, and I'm still not there yet. Even though I spent a lot of time developing my main character, I still haven't gotten to where I am so absolutely in love with this guy. And I really care about how much myself as a writer. He hasn't quite filled out yet to be the person I need him to be before I really go too much further. So I would say spend a lot of time with your characters and make your character really great, and make sure that the character fits the premise. Because if you have a story like Taken, where you have a dad that has to go to France to find his girl, his daughter that's been kidnapped by sex slave traders.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to have some like accountant who's, all he's done is go like to the desk and crunch numbers, unless there was some like really important, way that he could stop them by doing accounting. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You need to create your character so that the character is designed to fit your premise, and it organically, it can work both ways. You might start with a character idea and think, what kind of a story could I put my character in?
Mm-hmm.
I've got this great idea for a character. I mean, I came up with Lightning Man with this just image of this guy standing on top of a mountain, willing the lightning to strike him. He's been struck, a dozen times. And this is the only way he can stop this terrorist or whatever, this bad guy, by luring him into the open and grabbing him and having the lightning strike him, so he sacrifices his life to save whoever. And I developed this whole entire novel that I've been plotting out and working on and researching for 2 years now, just because I saw it in my head. So
and he's called Lightning Man?
The story's called Lightning Man, because it's kind of like a nickname somebody gives him because he's been struck by lightning so many times,
Is it out yet?
No, I'm writing it right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I just kind of came up with an idea. So you were asking, like, how do you know you have a good idea or a premise, whatever? So I came up with this idea, and I had to put it through the fire, because this is what writers should do. You should like have your ideas, and then you should just develop them and work on them. But most of them are going to fall by the wayside, or they should, because they're just not good enough. They don't have the legs to last 400 pages. I knew with Lightning Man, I could have a really interesting character, because I started giving him all kinds of interesting abilities that he got because of lightning, which a lot of people have had. Their hearing is increased. I went further, and I've given him things like, like how sharks can sense prey behind rocks. I've given him electromagnetic abilities that have, because of his electrical field, has been supercharged. So I didn't want to do a superhero novel. I wanted it to be kind of more like Phenomenon, the movie, which where the idea is that, this could happen to anybody, so I'm trying to make it realistic. But so I was playing with it, but I thought, this is great, because I have all this lightning material, lightning survivor stories and lightning facts, and they're fascinating. So, and I also felt like nobody had ever done this, or has done like a series about a character that, has, really, he's disabled. He has issues. He has memory losses. He's a flawed character because of lightning. And I wanted to bring to the forefront, the issues with lightning and electric shock and stuff like that.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. So, but anyway, so that's what writers need to do. They need to come up with an idea, not only that's like super great, but they have to be excited about it. Why spend like 8 months of your life writing a novel if you really hate your story and you hate it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have to really get excited about it, and then you have to think, why am I excited about it? What's exciting about my story, my premise that makes me want to spend like every day ignoring my family and all my responsibilities and the gardening and everything else to write this story, right?
Yeah, live right, thrive, and ignore your family.
There you go. Right. Yeah.
Have you heard of Brad Meltzer?
I have, I think. Wait.
He's kind of like not the new, but Clancy, and he says he won't write a character unless he knows his why and he knows where he's going. Otherwise, he won't, he'll cut the character out, So he's a real character development guy too. And he's kind of like following in the footsteps of Tom Clancy, but he's just writing one bestseller after the other now,
Okay, I haven't read him yet, but I will check him out for sure.
There's so many good people to read, How do you choose?
Yep. Well, I would say if you're a writer and you're trying to write some novels, I would just for now choose books that are like yours, that are bestsellers, so that you can really get the genre down. It's really important to nail your genre, because especially whether you're going to self-publish or try to get an agent, you need to be able to very specifically fit that novel alongside other bestsellers. I never knew that for a lot of years, and that's why I couldn't get my novel sold for so many years.
Yeah.
Because I didn't understand how important genre is, and I created a whole online course about how to do that. So,
it sounds simple and obvious, but sometimes it needs to be said, right? Yeah.
I think a lot of writers just don't do their homework. They know what they like to read, like, I read mystery, so I'm going to write a mystery. Okay, well, that's great. But have you taken the time to really deconstruct? Like, how do you know what is your typical third scene in the book?
Yeah.
high action scene? Is it a low action scene? Like with mine, I went through a number of novels and I laid out a chart, scene 1, and I put a summary of every single one of those scene 1s in a row so I could look. And guess what? All of those scene 1s were a high action setup scene. You know, there's some big thrilling action going on that tells the reader who is this character and what are they like. They're usually on another case if they're a detective, or they're in a courtroom if they're a lawyer, and they're finishing up. You know, you see them in action with something that's really exciting and interesting and fun. So that's what I did. I came up with the first opening scene where my character is doing his thing as a park ranger, and he's tracking down some bad guys up in the mountains with another ranger, and you get to see all these different little powers and abilities that he has because of lightning, you know. You know, I didn't want to start the book with him like sitting around thinking, which a lot of people do when they're just starting a novel and they've never written before. They end up having the first few scenes, the character is just not really doing anything. It's just sort of explaining and backstory and all that. You need to get away from that, you know, write it all down for yourself, but don't put it in the novel.
Yeah, that's another fine art of storytelling. Yeah. Who was it? Oh man, I don't know if it was Heinlein or Asimov. You know, he said his whole backstory was in that one sentence. You know, the door moved to the right or something, and then boom, you knew you were in a science fiction novel.
Right. Yeah, I don't know who you're talking about, but exactly. You know, the idea is that the author should know all the backstory, but it's like a what do you call those things in the water? No, the Titanic hit. Iceberg. Okay, here they go. I had to get a mental connection with my dead brain. Yeah, it's like an iceberg. So you have a little bit sticking up out of the surface, but there's a ton of it under the water. So you as the author know all the stuff that's under the water, but you only let a little bit of it peek out for the reader. And honestly, readers don't want you to tell them everything. They want you to keep a lot of secrets. They want you as the author to keep back as much as possible, but there is a fine balance, because if you don't tell enough, you don't show enough, that's underwriting, and then the reader is not engaged or they're confused. So
that's interesting. They want to keep, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's all.
Yeah, that's another interesting one. It seems so obvious, but it needs to be said, you know, so they want you to keep some secrets and don't, you know, tell everything. So what else is so obvious but needs to be said?
Oh, okay.
Now that I got you here.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. So, yeah, so the backstory, you want to kind of just drop in little bits if you are going to bring in some backstory, little flashbacks or whatever, little bits of stuff. Make sure it's important. You know, I mean, a lot of times people do a flashback or a whole scene, like showing how the girl met the guy and how it was so cute that they met in classroom and he got her a cup of coffee and they sat and talked for half an hour. It's like, really, I really don't need to know this. This is so ordinary. And the idea is you want to avoid on the nose. It's called on the nose writing. Jerry Jenkins talks a lot about this. You really want to avoid on the nose writing, which means that it might be well written. You might have like a passage that's very realistic. On the nose writing is very realistic, very, you know, accurate. It could be very well written, showing ordinary life, like people out to dinner at the restaurant and they're like, oh, could you please pass the butter? Oh yes, here you are. Waiter, could you get me a glass of wine? Which do you suggest? Oh, I like this brand. Okay, this is nice. Can I have blah, blah, blah. Okay, now you might be capturing it very accurately, but it's super boring because it's just, you know, what's the point? It's on the nose. It's not accomplishing anything. So writers will say, oh, well, it's showing my character doing her ordinary things in her ordinary life. Okay, boring. But we want to see ordinary life. We're trying to escape ordinary life. So those are things that you can summarize really quickly. And if you are going to put in a bit of backstory, it should be triggered by what happens in the present action.
Yeah.
Like if you, instead of opening a scene where they talking for 3 pages about how this guy used to be in the military, and you don't show anything like happening, maybe he's traumatized, he's got PTSD and all this like stuff going on, but instead of writing 3 pages about it, why not just start the scene with him in action, and he's in the garage and he's like reaching up to get something out of this top shelf of a cabinet, and his shoulder hurts, and it's like pain triggers the memory of when he got shot and he's got shrapnel in his shoulder, and all you need is like one sentence, and all of a sudden you know, oh, this guy used to be in the military, and he's got, you know, and then by his emotional reaction to it, you can almost tell like he is proud of his past in the military, or he resents it, or he's, you know, whatever. I mean, so you don't need that much. So the rule of 3 is a good rule to follow, which is generally have 3 lines. You might have like 3 lines of dialogue, and then you might want to switch to like 3 lines of narrative and a little bit of backstory or explaining. And then maybe you move into 3 lines of action. You can alternate. So you don't want to just stick with one thing for too long. You don't want to have too many paragraphs of a character processing, too many paragraphs of just action with no reaction. I mean, you can show a lot of high action, like, the guys, they're beating up a whole bunch of gang members or something on a street corner. But at some point, you need to get into that character's head to show what they're thinking. Take that, you stupid guy, or whatever. But you just want to break it up. So try to keep that in mind, to just break it up by rotating around. Like if you've written a bunch of actions, stop for a second, get into your character's head, or have him say a line of dialogue. He could say that out loud. Take that, you idiot. Back him over the head with a 2x4 or whatever. That's breaking up the action with dialogue. So and there's nothing wrong with having like long passages of rapid fire dialogue if it suits the purpose of the scene. Funny comedy where there's just this, back and forth banter going on, and you can have a lot of conversation. So again, you look at your genre and see what you're doing, and see if it's appropriate.
Yeah. Kind of reminded me, On the Nose. I kind of heard it more as like show, don't tell. Is that the same thing?
No, not really. 'Cause On the Nose is writing realistic material, realistic scenes or realistic action, but it's boring. It's accurate, but it's not interesting. So we don't want accurate and interesting. We want subtext and misdirection and all that kind of stuff. People don't usually say what they mean. They almost never say what they mean. So when you read really bad dialogue, where there's like 2 people talking and they're telling each other exactly how they feel, it doesn't ever sound believable, because especially when you're in an argument or something, you say stupid things and it's like it has nothing to do with how you're really feeling, or what really is the problem. So dialogue is tricky, but studying great writers that write great dialogue, it's wonderful to study that. I read a lot of James Lee Burke. He writes all kinds of stuff, but he's considered one of the greatest American novelists. And he writes a lot of Western, and he has a whole series set in New Orleans. But his dialogue is just amazing. I mean, everything about it. His writing is amazing. Setting, his characters, his narrative, his writing style. But when you look at the dialogue between the characters, you're just like, oh, there's so much that is not being said that you can hear. And that's great dialogue. So again, study stuff and see how it's done, and see if you can try to emulate it. It's not plagiarism if you practice trying to write like other writers. It's good exercise.
Yeah. Well, it's the fine art of writing. It takes a lifetime, right? It's I always say, you can learn to make a book in like a couple of weeks. I that's my course. I teach you how to publish and optimize for Amazon. But, and that doesn't take very long. But becoming a good writer and telling a fascinating story or a great story, that's a lifelong journey,
It's really hard, and every time I start a new novel, it's just as hard. I mean, I have a lot of knowledge under my belt, but at the same time, it's such a challenge, and it kicks your butt every time. It should. If not, then you're not working hard enough. I mean, I've talked to lots of very successful, famous writers, and they'll say the same thing. It's never easy, and it shouldn't be easy. You should have to work very hard at making it look really easy. I forget who said it, but easy reading is hard writing. Was it Tony?
That's a good one, yeah.
I can't remember, but so that's the key. Easy reading is hard writing, because it's easy to write bad and clunky with too much stuff in it, and it's hard to read. But to make something read smoothly and beautifully without a hitch, that's a great art, and it is a aspiration, I think, of every writer should be.
Yeah. So it doesn't sound like it, but do you get writer's block?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think writer's block, and I agree with Jerry Jenkins on this, that the writer's block really doesn't exist. I think it's a misnomer, because really a lot of times when people sit down to write and they can't write, it's a lot of other things. It's procrastination, it's insecurity. It's not like they can't think of an idea. A lot of times it's laziness for me. I'll procrastinate because I know how hard it's going to be to write a scene. I'll put it off, and I'll just stare at the screen. If I'm at that place, it's like, okay, it's obviously not the right time to write. I'm not going to push myself, So I think it helps. I wrote a blog post a couple weeks ago. If people want to look at Live, Write, Thrive, and I don't know when you're broadcasting this podcast, but so I think I put it out in December. Yeah, end of December. It's a blog post called "A Time to Write and a Time to Not Write." And I explore that a bit. And a lot of people wrote back saying, wow, I really, really needed that post. Because I talk about there's seasons, right? For everything, there is a season, and there is a time to write, and there's a time to not write. And sometimes, and I give a lot of different reasons for not writing. Sometimes we just aren't motivated or not creative, but other times other things are on our minds and upsetting us or distracting us, and we can't concentrate. It doesn't make sense to force yourself to write during those seasons when it's not a good time to write. So writer's block sometimes can be that. It's just not the right time to write. I have put projects aside for years because every time I've tried to approach them, I just feel in my gut like, okay, this is not the right time for me to be writing the story. I did that with the menopause murders for years. I kept telling people, I'm going to write this book. And I kept thinking, I'm going to sit down and write it. And I never could get to it. And then as soon as Donald Trump got elected president and my book was all about sexism and ageism and meism and all this stuff, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is the absolute perfect time to write this story and to set it right in this situation. And
then it just flowed.
And we wrote 150,000 words in 2 months. Me and my partner,
that's good.
Yeah, we chopped a lot of it out, but we had so much fun and we laughed all the way because it's a dark comedy about a woman who goes around murdering people, going through menopause, and it's the only way she spells relief. But it's really anybody listening that's a book publisher wants this book, come contact me. We even put a website up, so it's pretty fun. So if you go to themenopausemurders.com, you can read some of the funny stuff about it, but it is really drop dead hilarious. I mean, it's the kind of book stuff when you read it, you're just like rolling on the floor. I can't catch your breath because it's just so funny. And again, I had never written humor before, so I had to read a bunch of dark comedy humor to kind of get how it was done, and we had fun.
You'll have to give me that the links at the end. I'll put them on the post for this because I'm looking at your stuff and looking at all the things that I could put. So for one, the livewritethrive.com/resources is really good. You have all of these free templates, and it's just really valuable stuff. And I'm downloading this stuff right now, And then you just talked about that one post, the when to write or not to write.
A time to write and a time to not write. But they can find that on the blog.
Yeah. So and you'll have to give me those links at the end, and I'm going to put them in the show notes, and because there's your blog and website are very valuable. I mean, I'm looking. You've got so many templates and what we talked about. It's all there for free. And not even behind an email sign up. I put even my free stuff behind the email sign up.
I just have too much stuff. I want people to sign up for my emails, and they'll get free books. I give away free books, but only through my email sign up. But I just feel like I want to help writers. I want to make it as easy as possible to write novels, and I think charts are the way to go.
I love them. I love them. Like I said,
charts, and it's sort of like little stepping stones. They help you along the way. They're not going to write your novel for you, but they will certainly give you a lot of directions. So
like the Checklist Manifesto, that was another big bestseller, and it's So then
scene checklists, and all kinds of stuff. Right. Okay.
Yeah, really, I believe in them too. So that's why I would say livewritethrive.com/resources first, and then we'll get the rest in the blog post. So let's what is your number one tip for beginning authors?
Number one tip. I would say don't be in a super duper rush to write a novel. I mean, like I see a lot of the critiques that I do. I have these new writers that write an entire novel and they haven't spent any time really studying novel structure. So I would say don't be in a real big hurry to write an entire novel. Sometimes they do the NaNoWriMo and then they think, oh, that's novel's great. I'm going to just try to publish it. You'll regret it later. So take the time, just like anything, if you want to be a doctor or a school teacher or a bus driver or whatever you want to be, you have to take the time to learn what you need to learn first before you jump dive in and, do that. So novel writing isn't any different at all. You have to really take the time and learn the craft and then practice. And I think it's helpful if you can, once you've written a little bit, get some feedback. Hire somebody, a writing coach, an editor, somebody professional, not just a critique group that will say, "Oh, gee, that sounds so good," and then you send it to a professional person and go, "Okay, this is a train wreck, and I'll tell you why." Let's get started on like how you can improve this. Because writing is tricky.
That's like one of my other questions. What's the one question they should be asking you, but they're not?
Wait, me as an editor?
Yeah, what's the one question you wish people would ask you,
When they send me their project, or just mean when?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so, what do I wish they would ask me? I don't know. I just tell them what I think without them asking me anything.
Yeah. That's okay.
Usually they ask me like, is my writing any good, or is my story any good? And that's what we're dealing with. Yeah.
Okay. Here's a hard one. What's your number one tip for advanced authors?
That's a good one. It depends. I mean, if they really know their craft really well and they know how to write really well, but they're having trouble selling and marketing their book, that goes into a whole other category. But as far as the craft of writing, I would just encourage experienced writers to not focus on the success and the money and the sales, but stay in the joy of the writing. Because I think over the years, a lot of times writers just forget why they even started writing in the first place. And there's so many stresses, like I've got to write this book and I got to finish this book and I got to try to get it published. I got to make a lot of money. And so when they're writing, they're not like letting themselves just enjoy being in the zone. And we can always put these deadlines. I've got to finish the scene today. I need to write 5,000 words. Blah, even if they're not under contract, but they just do this to themselves. But I think sometimes, we forget how to just write because we enjoy writing. What about writing a poem? What about just stopping the project you're doing and writing, just free write, or write a short story, or do something different just for fun? Because when we were little kids, we used to do that. I used to write little books of poems. My kids would do that too. They would take a little blank book and they would write a whole bunch of poems, like 2 lines. I love goats. Goats are cute. And they
cool.
And it was, it's super fun, right? That's what your kids do. And you love it. But we used to do that when we were young. We would just I used to write a journal and I would draw pictures and I would just write poetry and I would just be in the moment and look at nature and just be inspired. And I think we just closed ourselves off. We're in a cage in our house and we shut everything else out and we're on our computers. And we're not really living life. I mean, you can't really write about life unless you live it. So I think we need to spend more time living life and experiencing life and playing with the words and being wordsmiths.
Wordsmith. That's a good word.
Yeah. I mean, I love words. And that's why I wrote a 7-book fantasy series, because I love writing fantasy because you can play with the words. And I get so into the twisting words and using them in weird ways, and just it's just so much fun. And it's hard to bring that into like a thriller, but there's ways of writing beautifully, and I think we miss that. We're trying to be so commercial and write so commercial, like Dean Koontz or something, where you're just writing real spare, but there's no beauty to it. And
he's from Orange County too.
Oh, okay. I'm kind of more like, I like the beautiful twist of phrase. I like to have like one word in a sentence that I just go, ooh, that word is really neat in there. I want to be surprised. I want to taste, taste new words. And just, that's what I love about James Lee Burke, because he can just write 2 lines of a setting, and the words that he chooses are packed with emotion. And you're just going, wow, that was amazing,
That's a good tip. So if I was going to go get one of his books, which one should I get?
Oh, James Lee Burke? Oh, man. Well, there's so many. I just really like the Billy Bob Holland series. I forget which the first one is, but there's like 5 or 6. Make sure you get the first one because they have to be in order. But it's like Cimarron Rose or Bitterroot. I don't remember, but just look at his Billy Bob Holland series and figure out which one and start with those. They're set in Montana. They're beautiful. The setting, I love setting. Beautiful setting.
Cool.
So evocative. You really feel like you're there. So yeah, really, really super neat.
That's a good one. Yeah, okay, I'm going to check that out. So, okay, what's the one thing you wish you would have done sooner?
All of the above.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I really wish that when I first started writing, I got an agent right away. Elmo Leonard's agent picked me up right away. Said, I'll be on your book in a minute. It's the first agent I queried. My book sucked. It needed a lot of work, and it never sold. And I feel like it was a disservice in a lot of ways, because I was under the illusion that I was this fantastic writer, and I wasn't. So I really wish I had not hurried to try to write a whole novel without first learning about novel structure and studying that. I mean, nowadays it's so easy. You have podcasts, you've got online courses, you've got online writing groups, you've got webinars, all this stuff. Back in the day when the dinosaurs roamed the earth, when I was young and I started writing novels, dinosaurs, all we had were library books. And my library didn't really have very many books on writing craft, and they were usually like textbooks for English comp classes. And there were writers' conferences but I couldn't afford to really go to any. So I didn't have any resources. I mean, really, I didn't have any resources. I could buy a book or two on, like, Strunk and White or something. I could buy a book or two on writing, but that wasn't going to help me at all. So I just think today we have so much, and also the help of other people like you and other writers that are willing to just share. There's so many blogs. All these blogs. I have like almost 2 million words in print on my blog. That's just for novel writing. And I'm thinking, if I have that much, look how much is out there. So anytime you just want to, like if a writer just doesn't know how to write good dialogue, just Google it, and there's probably 500 posts and articles out there on how to write good dialogue. I mean, you have resources at your disposal. For sure. So
you got, that's what I was kind of talking about earlier. You know, you have to prioritize which author to read, which blog to read, because they're so valuable, so much. But I know yours is very valuable. I'm getting all of your free resources here, and livewritethrive.com/resources, and I'm really enjoying those, and I'm going to use them. And so one quick technical question: you have a couple of courses on Teachable, and I was thinking about using them too. Do they have a comment system in the course?
Yep. You can leave comments on the different modules, and I reply to them, and those comments stay there for everybody to see. So if there's like a really cool comment that somebody has that's helpful, to other people out there. And I'm also,
so tell us about your courses.
I don't have a whole lot of courses on my school so far. This year I'm thinking of putting one together on characters, on how to develop a cast of characters, because while it's a huge undertaking and it would be a gigantic course, I think, but I really feel like it's really important because there's so little really covering the full cast of characters and how you determine which kinds of characters you need in your story. So that's kind of fun. It's sort of like, you want to do the taco enchilada combination platter, you don't really know what you need to order, right? So the courses that I have, I do have a course for editors and that's specific for editors. And I also have a course on targeting genre for big sales, which is kind of probably what you talk about a lot of, this optimizing and how to make the most out of Amazon. So I have that, but it also goes into like how to deconstruct other novels and how to, search, drill down into Amazon to see where there are niche genres that would be appropriate for you that might potentially have good sales possibilities. So that's one thing. But my other courses are all about novel writing craft. So the main two that I recommend and that most people take, I have thousands and thousands of people signed up for these courses, is the 10 key scenes one, which I talked about. And then also I have a little mini course, which I think is like 3 hours long. I don't even know if it's that long. And that's the 4 essential pillars of novel structure. Those are just the first 4 pillars from my 12 key pillar book. But those are the foundational corner pillars. I call them the 4 corner supports of your story, which I mentioned earlier, which is the protagonist with the goal, conflict and high stakes, concept with a kicker, and theme with a heart. So it's all about how to construct and develop those 4 corner supports. And it's
Cool.
really super important. And it ties in with the 10 key scenes because
Yeah.
you need to know all that before you can
Mhm.
even start putting your scenes together. So
And
those
that one's free?
that one's, I think, like $49 or something.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. And then all the courses are lifetime access. They're go at your own speed, do it yourself. These aren't like group courses where they have a start date and an end date. And I'm
Right.
just saying, I may do some of those later, but not too
Yeah.
teachable. But yeah, so you can go in over and over again. I like in the 10 key scenes, there's a number of exercises that you stop along the way, and you stop the video and you work on an exercise from what you've been learning, and you keep developing your scenes as you go along. So I think it helps to go back in over and over again and
Yeah.
rewatch sections that you're not too sure about. So I take other teachable courses from other people, and I really enjoy being able to do that, to go back in and like watch something again and see,
Yeah.
if I pick up something else the next time.
I've been looking at Teachable a lot and liking it, and I took a couple courses there already. Might move some of mine there, but we're not talking about the big deal. The big deal was you have a deal on your course for ZBooks readers, right?
Yeah, I mean, I offer this deal to, different groups, but yeah, I'm happy to extend it to anybody that's listening to your podcast, is to get half off my 10 key scene course. And that's good through all the way through this year. So you can just use that coupon code. I can't remember what it is. Isn't it like half 10 keys with the numeral 10?
Yes.
All caps, yeah.
Yeah, but first they have to know where to go. So your course is on Teachable.
Right, cslakin.teachable.com.
Okay, and then look up the 10 key scenes that frame up your novel.
Right, you
and
just
then,
click on that course.
Yeah, and then use half 10 keys at the checkout, right?
Right, it's a coupon code, so it's not going to
Nice.
show a discount until you put that in there.
Okay.
You do have to enroll in the school. I think you just sign up with a username and ID, and it enrolls you in my school. You're not obligated to do anything or buy anything at that point.
Right.
I'm not going to send you a bazillion emails, but
Not even a gazillion?
no, not even a gazillion. So but from there you can pick which courses you want to take and sign up and whatever, and you can put the coupon code in for sure.
Okay, I'm going to spell it one more time because I think we're just offering this on the podcast. So HALF10KEYS.
Yeah.
So
Is that what I sent you? Because I can't remember what I had sent
I
you.
got it right in front of me.
Yeah.
So
Half
CS
10.
Lakin at teachable.com and look up her 10 key scenes and then half 10 keys. Thank you very much. That's very generous because
Yeah, and let me just also mention that Teachable has a 30-day money-back guarantee, and you are perfectly welcome to sign up for the course, take it, go through it, and if you're partway through or even all the way through, as long as it's within 30 days, if you didn't like it and you want your money back, fine. Then just
nice.
send me an email and say, I want a refund. So I just want people to be happy. If it's the stuff you already know and you're not getting anything out of it, don't pay for it. Hopefully it'll be worth it. It's a $99 course, and I think so half off is like $49.50.
Perfect.
I don't know. I can't do the math, right? How do I divide 99?
Don't ask me. That was my excuse. You beat me to it.
I'm not a mathematician. That's why I write novels.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Okay, where else can we reach you?
You can just reach me through Live Right Thrive. I mean, I have a contact form. I'm happy to have people contact me. I mean, if you want some editing done, you want to critique. Oh, I also have my other website, critiquemymanuscript.com. I have a lot of websites. That's my critique site. I would highly recommend, if you're even considering having a critique done, go to critiquemymanuscript.com and read all about it. And you'll see my pricing. You can even upload and pay and do everything right there. But the whole idea is to understand what really is involved in a critique and why you need one. I really would recommend it before you take any steps to have your book edited, line edited. Don't fix the spelling before you fix the structure. I always describe it as like you bake, it's like putting beautiful, delicious icing on a really yucky tasting cake. It looks really great.
That's a good one, yeah.
And it's just disgusting, right? So we don't want our novels to be like that. We don't want them to all look so beautiful with the icing, like the sentences are perfect, the spelling's perfect, the formatting is perfect, right? And then when you get into the meat or what's the metaphor? You get into the cake part of the story, you dig into your cake, it tastes really awful because it's terrible. The writing's bad or structure's bad or both. So work on your structure first, and then and put the icing on it.
So what was the website again?
Okay, that one's critiquemymanuscript.com.
Perfect. Anything else you want to say?
If you want to travel around to California, I'm holding 7 boot camps this year. I just had somebody book from Australia, so people are coming. Maybe they'll come from Germany. I don't know. But
nice.
All the boot camps that I teach are in California in beautiful locations. We've been doing it in Tahoe, like Lake Tahoe, for the last 5 years. Oh. And guess what? There's another website, writingforlifeworkshops.com. That's my event booking site. So if you're interested,
okay, cool.
If you're interested in booking, of course, you can go to Live Right Thrive, and you'll read all about it there too. So it'll direct you to the site where you can actually book. But we're doing some great boot camps in Tahoe and in wine country and Mendocino Coast, Monterey, Carmel, that area. So I like to put the boot camps in really beautiful locations so people can turn it into a vacation also, spend some time enjoying the area, and also kick their butt with, learning how to write scenes and plot and stuff like that.
Awesome. That sounds like a topic for another podcast, because we're already over an hour and something now.
Sure.
But I really want to know about these boot camps now.
Okay.
Sure. Oh, okay. But maybe next time, or just tell us quick, like, how much are they? And California is a great state to have them in.
Well, the boot camps, the plotting boot camp, there's a plotting madness boot camp, and you plot out your novel in 3 days. Honestly, come with an idea, leave with a full outline.
Nice.
And with the scene structure boot camp, we talk about scenes and we examine scenes and we tear them apart. We learn about how everything there is to know about scene structure in 3 days. So they're both 3 days long. They're $300. So
cool.
Some of them, you can stay, find your own lodging, and just come. It's just full days, 3 full days, Monday.
That's competitive pricing. That's good.
Yeah. And things like at Tahoe and Monterey and in other places, we actually rent a house, and so people would also pay for a room in addition.
Nice, yeah. Okay, nice. All right. Well, Susan, it's been really, really rich, and we could go on another deep dive into that, but I think I have to respect your time finally, and so.
I've enjoyed talking to you a lot, and I really enjoy sharing this information with everybody. And I don't mean to be like pumping, like promoting all my websites and stuff, but we just kind of went from one to another. But
no, but I want you to. It's okay.
Yeah, the idea is that I just want people to love writing and to feel confident in writing novels, so that they can sit down and not have writer's block. They sit down and really enjoy the process. And feel really fulfilled in the creative process. It's creativity is a wonderful gift that we've been given, and we should really value it and enjoy it.
Thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed it too. And I look forward to talking to you again, and maybe hitting one of your boot camps, because I'm from California. So
come on down. Yeah. Come on out. It'll be so fun.
I'm thinking of June. Do you have anything going on in June?
Yep. June, we're doing the Geyserville boot camp, June 10th through 12th, which is in wine country. And we're going to do a lot of wine tasting. I don't know how much scene structure we're going to get done, because we're going to be drinking.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm putting it on my calendar. So thanks again. And I really, I'm seriously, I'm going to try that. So I'm okay. I'll talk to you soon then.
All right. Thank you so much, Erica. Thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Okay, my friends, if you like that podcast, then remember to go to zbooks.co and go get all the materials to start your authoring career. We have a 7-day challenge every week, so there's no excuse to not finish your book. And remember, please go to iTunes and upvote this podcast and Google Play. Okay, I look forward to seeing you at the top.